Okay.
Ma'am, shall we wait or there she is back?
I don't know why it's happening. I'm not doing anything to it. But I would again like to welcome you all. And I would like to express my gratitude to our Vice Chancellor, who has always been very supportive for whatever we undertake. And it takes him barely any time at all to say, just go ahead. And you don't even have to wait for me to give my formal approval, because it's always good to have things happening in the university. So that is the kind of incredible support that I've always received, for which I'm really very grateful. And I'm also grateful to our Pro-Vice Chancellor, Professor Sumitra Kukreti, who is also a professor of English. And so she is really involved in this webinar as well, because it has so much to do with language and literature. I am grateful to Professor Ranjana Banerjee, who is the expert who will be taking us through a lot of Pushkin's writings. And I look forward to listening to you, ma'am. And of course, I am very grateful to our friends in the Russian embassy. These kind of webinars only serve to deepen our ties, the Indo-Russian ties that we've enjoyed for such a long time. So what better way to connect than through literature and art and culture? So thank you very much for being with us today. And Shivaji Bhaskar, who teaches Russian here in the Indira Gandhi Open University, he has been very active in organizing this, talking to people, coordinating. So thank you, Shivaji. And
my pleasure, ma'am. Thank you
all for being with us today. And over back to Jadwan.
Thank you, ma'am. Taking the cue from ma'am's intervention, I would say that there are many facets of Alexander Pushkin that we will perhaps explore, re-explore, and discover during today's session. Just a small quotation from Pushkin to go to the next phase of the program. He says, "A deception that elevates us is dearer than a host of lowly truths." I wonder at times whether he was a diplomat or a writer. With this, I would introduce you Dr. Shivaji Bhaskar, who is a senior assistant professor of School of Foreign Languages, IGNOU. He is an expert of Russian language, literature, and civilization, but his expertise on didactics of foreign language goes beyond the confines of Russian, as he has designed and developed Japanese and Korean language programs for our school. Dr. Bhaskar's interest about Pushkin goes back in 2011, when he organized a national seminar on the same day, that is 6th of June, and again in 2019, at his behest, the School of Foreign Languages celebrated Russian language. Now may I request, sir, to deliver your introductory message, sir.
Thank you so much, Aditya, for a wonderful introduction. Thank you, Professor Malti, for encouraging us to, coming up with this theme on Alexander Pushkin and celebrating on the day, actually on 6th of June, when he was born in 1799 in Moscow, Russia. I'm really grateful to our friends and distinguished guests from the Russian embassy for readily accepting our invitation. And today we are meeting here online. Special thanks to our Vice Chancellor, sir, and Kukreti ma'am, our Pro-Vice Chancellor, and everyone for encouraging us thoroughly. Alexander Pushkin, as Professor Malti ma'am rightly said, that he's beyond Russian literature. He belongs to the world literature. As from his childhood itself, he started creating masterpieces, and he's also credited with writing masterpieces like Yevgeny Onegin, Queen of Spades, and Ruslani Ludmila. Many more such great works of fiction. Pushkin's relation with the Tsarist regime is also very interesting. During that time, he could gather that much courage to write on themes like politics and many other, which actually brought him into the limelight. As well as Pushkin occupies a unique place in Russian literature. It's not just that Russians and people who speak Russian, they love him. People across all discipline, across all subject, across all universities, and in almost everywhere, he is celebrated today. And perhaps as we speak, there is a program going on in the Russian Culture Center as well, and celebrating this great Russian writer, author, and playwright. His life as well as his work has acquired mythical status. Pushkin's sacred status itself been parodied by Russian authors, including the satirist Mikhail Joshenko, Daniel Khams, and Andrei Sinyavsky. Indeed, Pushkin is truly one of the world's most accomplished poets. His verse, however, which relies the author's perfect control of form, tone, and language, does not read well in translation. That is why we are endeavoring to bring language programs of higher level so that our students, our present students and prospective students can also learn the language and read the work in original instead of reading it in translation. Another important point about Pushkin's is that Pushkin's narrative poems, including Sigani, which means the gypsy, which considers the meaning of the freedom, in which the plot is mere excuse of parody of literary forms and conventions, such as in Domik I Kolomne, which means little house in Kolomna. Most famously written in 1833, The Bronze Horseman, which reflects to the Peter the Great. And let me tell you that Peter the Great, he acquired such a place in the Russian history. The city of St. Petersburg as the capital of the Imperial Russia was founded by him. During that time, lots of work was done. And Pushkin has been credited with such ideas where he has written a special work like The Bronze Horseman. Pushkin's greatest work, probably the Yevgeny Onegin, which is read as Eugene Onegin in English, is the first truly great Russian novel and a source of countless themes and images in Russian fiction. I am sure that with this, and our students and our friends who are interested in Russian literature and language, they will draw more inspiration, and in a few days ahead, we will come up with such more themes, with such more webinars, with the permission, of course, from our director and our authorities in IGNOU. With this, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yet, it was very brief, but yet, like kind of set the tone of the webinar today. In fact, Russia and India share a unique bond. In Astrakhan, a city by the Caspian Sea, there lived a community of 300 Indians who formed a visible minority in what was then a town of 10,000 inhabitants. It was back in the 18th century. According to some experts, the sight of a Marwari or a Khatri probably prompted Alexander Pushkin to describe the mixture of clothes, languages, faces, and ethnicities that he saw in Astrakhan. The Indian traders brought with them the copies of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Russian HR Yemlyan Kornev, forgive me if the pronunciation is not correct, Yemlyan Kornev depicted the prayers rituals of the Vaishnav Khatris in Astrakhan. Nikolai Novikov, again my due apologies if the pronunciation is not correct, Nikolai Novikov, a writer, publisher, and philanthropist who was the face of Russia's enlightenment, had the patronage of the Queen of Russia, Catherine the Great, and the support of Russian Orthodox Church to publish the first Russian translation of the Gita. This is just an example of the cultural relation between India and Russia. Today, the Embassy of Russian Federation is actively contributing in the field of Russian language, literature, culture through its cultural network. As we speak here, the Russian Language Day is also being celebrated across the Russian Embassy Culture Centers. We have, as our distinguished guest, Mr. Mikhail Chitrov, Counselor, Embassy of Russian Federation in New Delhi. We would also like to thank you and your embassy for the constant support to our school with pedagogical and cultural materials. May I now request Mr. Chitarov to deliver his address.
Everything is okay? Can you hear me? So, esteemed Vice Chancellor, Professor Nageshwar Rao, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. Frankly speaking, it's really my great pleasure to welcome the webinar Remembering Alexander Pushkin, held by the Distinguished School of Foreign Languages of the Indira Gandhi National Open University, one of the most prestigious institutions of India. I'm also honored to congratulate all of you who has linked the destiny and career with the Russian language on the remarkable event introduced 12 years ago by the United Nations organization, the Russian Language Day. You know that the Russian language is also one of the working languages in the United Nations. And I would like to bring to your kind notice that it's also the language of cosmonauts and astronauts on the International Space Station. People also use the Russian language as a language of common communications. This date, 6th of June, coincides with the birthday of the great Russian poet, dramaturg, and writer, Alexander Pushkin. And the following speakers will tell us, and already told, about his legacy in the Russian literature, which is known to everyone who loves Russian language, which was further developed and enriched by such an outstanding writers as Leo Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Turgenev, and many others. Supporting studies of Russian language and literature in India has always been one of the priority missions for the embassy here and the network of the Russian houses in India. Of course, our strategic partnership is unimaginable without the decades-long work of Russian language professors, scholars, translators, who have educated the generation of our country's friends here. Thank you so much, everybody. What Russian language can offer to Indian young generation today? It opens access to thousands of training programs in the Russian Federation, in different Russian universities, and famous across Indian people for more than 50 years. In such fields like medicine, engineering, agriculture, for good price and best quality, according to multiple reviews. The graduates can enjoy the privileges looking for employment in the Russian Federation and India at growing major joint ventures, including such symbols of our friendship as Kudankulam and Brahmos projects. They become successful professionals, both countries' corporate leaders. Moreover, our language is in much demand in global and regional diplomacy. And Russian language is a major language for scientific research and publication. Its proficiency is required for all the teams at the International Space Station, I already said. The galaxy of brilliant Russian scholars and academicians who used to conduct their scientific research in various fields, from astronomy and chemistry to philosophy and literature, expressed their immortal ideas and discoveries in Russian language. This process will never stop. So studying Russian in India is a reliable investment into the future. Apart from that, learning Russian will provide you the knowledge of one of the most beautiful languages in the world, containing matchless words for human feelings. This is the language to discover the unique world of the Russian literature, of course, one of the vibrant and exciting prose and poetic traditions of the world. We are really pleased to know that the local students become aware of these benefits since their interest in studying Russia and learning Russian is growing. It's taught in more than 50 Indian educational institutions, strengthening exchanges with their Russian counterparts. And we are successfully introducing here new licensed language textbooks for the Russian studies adapted for the Indian market. We are deeply interested in exploring Indian book market, which also means winning hearts and minds of Indian readers. And we are absolutely and very sincerely grateful for the opportunity to be a focal theme country in 2020 in Kolkata on one of the most prestigious international book fair. And personally, while visiting this international great event, I have noticed absolutely great and strong interest among Indian auditorium in Russian literature as well-known classic and also in modern writers. And given the continued interest among Indian people in Russian language and culture, there is a considerable potential in developing these studies that cannot be unfolded without large-scale state support. To provide efficient promotion and support for the Russian language internationally, Russian abroad concept has been adopted by our government, while the federal target program Russian language is being implemented. We welcome the talks between Jawaharlal Nehru University and Ruski Mir State Foundation, supported by Indira on starting Russian studies at this high status university be held by a Russian professor. What else can the two countries offer to Russian language learners and professors here in India? As one of such measures, we suggest introduction of the Russian language into the official curriculum of Indian secondary schools by signing the relevant intergovernmental agreement. We are also ready to look into proposals to assign Russian language professors to local universities here and schools on a rotational basis to restart the publication of Russian classical and modern literature in India. Dear friends, dear friends, I wish every success to the participants of the webinar and to all the professors who share with Indian people their knowledge of the language, which has substantially contributed to the development of the world civilization. Thank you so much.
On behalf of IGNOU, on behalf of School of Foreign Languages, I would like to thank Mr. Chitrov for this wonderful presentation. Of course, as you have said, 1984 Soyuz mission, which had an Indian astronaut. We all remember, we all cherish those moments of history. And all your suggestions we have listened to, we have noted, and we really thank you for this wonderful presentation you made. Now, coming back to Alexander Pushkin, among many of the enterprises that Alexander Pushkin undertook in his life, there was a literary magazine called Sovremennik, which can be translated in English as The Contemporary. And this magazine was one of the first magazines to publish Charles Dickens in Russian. This brings us a link to Alexander Pushkin and English literature. On this note, I would like to introduce our Pro-Vice Chancellor, Professor Sumita Kukreti, who is an outstanding scholar of T.S. Eliot, contemporary English women literature, and also teaching of English language. She has authored many books and she has many papers on literature, English teaching. Ma'am, may I now request you, may I call on you to deliver your special address, please.
Thank you, Dr. Tato. Honorable Vice Chancellor IGNOU, Professor Nageshwar Rao-ji, my fellow Vice Chancellors, our guests today, Mr. Mikhail Kryucherov, Counselor, Embassy of the Russian Federation, Professor Ranjana Banerjee from JNU, Professor Malti Mathur, Director SOFL, directors from various schools, Dr. Shivaji Bhaskar, and all the participants. A very good afternoon to one and all. At the outset, I would like to congratulate Director SOFL and all the faculty members of the school for organizing this webinar on Alexander Pushkin. Known as the father of Russian literature and the founder of modern Russian language, the credit to introduce Romanticism and Russian writing goes to Pushkin. And as Mr. Mikhail Kryucherov told us about culture and literary traditions of Russia, which is very, very informative and inspiring. He also told us about the various efforts by Russian government to promote Russian language and literature. As we all know that Pushkin, Leo Tolstoy, Maxim Gorky, Dostoevsky are some of the great writers, and as student of literature, most of us have read these authors in translation, if not in the original. Among them, Pushkin is considered by many to be the greatest Russian poet and the founder of modern Russian literature. Critics consider many of his works a masterpiece. Pushkin inspired the genre of folk tales and writings of other authors like Maxim Gorky. His use of Russian, quite at the same time, formed the basis of the style of novelists like Ivan Turgenev and Leo Tolstoy. In 2010, UNESCO declared 6 June, Pushkin's birthday, as the Russian Language Day. I'm happy that the School of Foreign Languages is organizing this webinar to commemorate 223rd birth anniversary of this renowned 19th century Russian poet, playwright, and novelist. I thank Russian Embassy and Mr. Mikhail Kryucherov in particular for kind cooperation to School of Foreign Languages that made this event meaningful. I'm sure that the lecture by Professor Ranjana Banerjee on Russian literature and the legacy of Alexander Pushkin would transport the participants into the world of Russian literature, reinvigorating their interest in it. The director and the entire school deserve accolade for organizing this webinar on Alexander Pushkin. Once again, I congratulate the school and all the members who are associated with this webinar. Thanks to all. Over to you, Dr. Tato.
Thank you, ma'am. Your words of encouragement will really help us. Thank you, ma'am, again. Pushkin was a polyglot. He had known at least 14 languages, of which French, German, Spanish, and Arabic are taught at the School of Foreign Languages in IGNOU. I am talking about this because I represent the French discipline of the school, and we have also 2 French connections of Pushkin. Pushkin was highly inspired by the French Enlightenment and Voltaire, whom he called the bearer of the lamp of philosophy to the dark archives of history. The second French connection was at his death. He died in a duel with his wife's sister's husband, Georges Dantes, who was a Frenchman. In fact, Pushkin's life is no less intriguing than his own writings. And to discover this, now I would like to present Professor Ranjana Banerjee from Center of Russian Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Professor Banerjee did her master's in philology from the People's Friendship University and earned her doctoral title from the Institute of Oriental Studies, Academy of Sciences, Moscow. Needless to mention that she is the author of several academic and literary works. Recently, she has also translated Indian literature into Russian, of which is called Tarashankar Bandyopadhyay's Arogya Niketan, and it was published by the Indian Academy of Letters, which is known as Sahitya Academy, in 2019. Now, Professor Banerjee, may I request you to start your speech on Russian literature and the legacy of Alexander Pushkin.
Thank you. Could you allow me to share the screen, please? I want to share the screen. Can I do that? Yeah. Is it visible?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So, good afternoon, all. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Malti Mathur, the Director of School of Foreign Languages, for inviting me to give a talk on the occasion of the birth anniversary of Alexander Pushkin. It is indeed a very big occasion. Alexander Pushkin resides in the heart of, if not all, majority of Russians and Russian speakers. In every occasion, be it an informal gathering or an official event, Pushkin's lines from Pushkin's works resonates. As we, Bengalis say, that we don't need a reason to remember Rabindranath Tagore. He has become an integral part of our life. Similarly, the Russians don't need a reason to remember Pushkin. So I would start my talk with a brief introduction on Pushkin's life and creative journey. So Pushkin, as you know, was born on 6th of June, 1799. His father, Sergei Lubovich, hailed from a noble family. And his mother, Nadezhda Osipovna, actually belonged to an Abyssinian family. His great-grandfather came from Constantinople along with the slaves during Peter the Great's time. And thereafter, he became very close to Peter the Great. Pushkin, in fact, immortalized his great-grandfather in one of his novels, The Blackmoor of Peter the Great, which unfortunately was an incomplete novel. So coming back to Pushkin's life, Pushkin started learning French very early. We're talking about French. So here I am. Why I'm saying this? Because you should know that French literature and culture had a huge impact on the Russian elites from the beginning of 19th century. The Russian elites, they were not only following the trends, they were not only following the fashion, they were not only reading French literature, they made French the mode of communication amongst themselves. As English is here, so you will understand. So they used to converse amongst themselves in French, not in Russian. The impact of French that time was more than Russian amongst the elites. Pushkin, along with French, actually had a huge interest in Russian literature and culture too. Why so? It was because of three reasons. Just a second. Yeah, the first reason was, So the first reason was that Pushkin was brought up by a Russian nanny. Her name was Arina Radionovna. And it was she who had introduced Pushkin to Russian folklore, folk culture. And it was she who taught Pushkin to love the Russian people. And she inculcated the interest towards Russian literature and culture in Pushkin. And that is how Pushkin started reading Russian folk tales and other literature too. Pushkin was very fond of his nanny, and he penned a few poems, dedicated to nanny. And I would like to read one of them. The poem is called "To My Nanny." It goes like this: "Dear doting sweetheart of my childhood, companion of my austere fate, in the lone house deep in the wild wood, how patiently for me you wait. Alone beside your window sitting, you wait for me and blame the clock, while in your wrinkled hands, your knitting fitfully falters to a stop. Beyond the crumbling gates, the pine trees shadow the road you was so well. Nameless forebodings, dark anxieties oppress your heart. You cannot tell what visions haunt you. Now you seem to see. Here, I think one could feel how fondly Pushkin remembers his nanny, who took care of him like her own child, who used to be that much anxious when Pushkin was away from home, as any mother would have been. So coming back to Pushkin's interest in Russian language and literature, in spite of being from the elite class, the second reason was the literary environment he grew up in. Pushkin's uncle, Vasily Pushkin, was a well-known poet. And that was the reason various eminent writers and critics regularly visited Pushkin house, and there were regular discussions on literature about the latest works. Pushkin, with great interest, used to listen to their conversation. That was the second reason. And the third reason was his access to the rich collection of books, which was there in their home library. So that is how he got acquainted to not only Russian literature, but French and European literature. And that is how Pushkin, from there, Pushkin started taking huge interest in literary activities. He started writing at a very tender age, when he was 8 years old. The first poem he penned was in French. So in 1811, Pushkin joined the Lyceum. What is Lyceum? Lyceum is the specialized school for the children of the nobles, and it was situated in the Guards village. There, along with his studies, Pushkin continued writing, and in fact, his literary career started there. His first poem was published when he was still a student in 1814. The poem was "To My Friend, a Poet." It was published in the journal Vesnik Evropy. And many eminent writers actually took note of Pushkin. They appreciated his work, and he was noticed. After completing his studies, Pushkin worked for a very brief period. And thereafter, he devoted his life to literature. He started his literary journey as a romantic poet. One of the major themes of his romantic poems is love. Pushkin was known to be a great admirer of female beauty, and he had penned beautiful poems dedicated to his lady love. So one of the most popular poems, which I think each and every student who is acquainted to Russian language knows actually this poem. I would like to just read it out. The poem goes like this. It is here. Yeah. I loved you once. Perhaps that love has yet to die down thoroughly within my soul. But let it not dismay you any longer. I have no wish to cause you any sorrow. I loved you quietly, without a hope, tortured at times by shyness, tortured at times by jealousy. I loved you with such tenderness and candor, and pray God grants you to be loved that way again. So this is a beautiful artistic expression of unrequited love. True love is built on sacrifice, on concern for the loved ones. So the other significant theme of his romantic verses is freedom. These verses were penned under the influence of the Decembrist and Decembrist movement. Who are the Decembrists? Decembrists are the liberal-minded nobles who raised their voice against the Tsar's autocracy and serfdom. Serfdom, if you don't know, I would just like to, for those who are here, I would just like to tell Russia was a feudal country. And the peasants there mostly were serfs. Serfdom was an institutional system which legally tied a peasant to a landlord in variety of ways. And he did not have the right to leave that landlord without permissions. So they were like bonded laborers. So here, that is why the liberal, they wanted to bring reform in the system. And that is why, for the well-being of the mass, that is why they were having various uprisings against the Tsar, against serfdom, against his autocracy. Pushkin became close to some of these Decembrists, and he wholeheartedly supported them. And why they were called Decembrists? They were called Decembrists because they had an uprising in December 1825. It was suppressed, but from that time they were called Decembrists. Many of them went to exile, many died, but Pushkin was with them. And that time he penned few very such freedom, poems against serfdom and autocracy, like Liberty to Chadayev and The Village, and many other poems, which were used by the Decembrists, distributed. And these poems became a motivational force for the movement. So Pushkin that time proved that pen is mightier than the sword. The Tsar and his regime were really scared that time, and they decided to send Pushkin in exile. So he was so that he could be kept away from the mass. So Pushkin was that time sent to the southern part and thereafter to Mikhailovsky, which was away from Petersburg. But his talent could not be suppressed. So here is one of the freedom-loving poems of Pushkin. It is an excerpt from the poem Chadayev, where he writes, while freedom's flame within us lives, while we by honor's voice are guided to Russia, comrade, let us give our spirits whole and undivided. Dear friend, have faith. The wakeful skies. Here it is not showing. So, dear friend, have faith. The wakeful skies presage a dawn of wonder. Russia shall from her age-old sleep arise. So he actually somewhere talks about freedom. He hopes that freedom, they will get freedom. Russian people will soon gain their freedom. So these were the poems which motivated the people and the Decembrists. Light is not coming. Well, his talent could not be suppressed. While in exile, Pushkin actually wrote his masterpieces. In fact, his period in exile is considered as the most fruitful period of his literary career. He started writing Evgeny Onegin, which is called Eugene Onegin, but we are so used to, pronouncing it as Evgeny Onegin, so I would like to stick to that. Evgeny Onegin, which was a masterpiece, he wrote that for 10 years. It is a novel in verse. The next one is The Prisoner of Caucasus, The Fountain of Bakhchisarai, and thereafter Boris Godunov. And all these poems has a social message. And all these he had penned during his exile time. After exile, Pushkin lived for a short period in Moscow and thereafter shifted to Petersburg. In his works from the later period, one could trace a gradual shift from romanticism to realism. And some of his works, prominent realist works, are The Tales of Belkin, The Captain's Daughter. Even I would say from the shift from romanticism to realism is very much evident in Evgeny Onegin. Where his personal life is concerned, in the familial front, the writer's life was equally turbulent. In 1829, Pushkin met the Russian beauty Natalia Goncharova, whom he married in 1831. Unfortunately, her beauty became the cause of his death. A young French emigre in Russian service, Dantes, fell in love with Natalia Goncharova. Pushkin, when he came to know about it, he enraged, challenged him to a duel. Dantes, that time, got scared and actually in a haste he married Goncharova's sister to avoid the duel. But that romance continued and Pushkin again challenged him to a duel which took place in January 27, 1837. Dantes was the first one to shoot and Pushkin was mortally wounded and passed away in that duel. So, as you see, Pushkin's life was not any less intriguing than his characters from the novels. Now, I would like to talk about Pushkin's significant contribution to the literary world. The eminent writer Maxim Gorky rightly marked that Pushkin is the beginning of all beginnings. Yes, from Pushkin, the modern Russian literature starts. Actually, from Pushkin, the modern Russian language starts. He is the founder of modern Russian literature, modern Russian language. He is the founder of many literary genres. So, and language and literature somewhere has its impact on the culture also. So, he had a lot of impact, huge impact on Russian language, literature, culture. He simplified the language, Russian language. He explored various new genres, such as novel in verse, which is Evgeny Onegin, the novel in prose, Captain's Daughter, the historical drama, Boris Godunov, the genre of story, the tales of Belkin, and novella, that is the Queen of Spades. He innovated new metric system in verse, which is called Onegin stanza. And it was used later by many writers. Onegin stanza, as you understand, it was used in Evgeny Onegin. His novel in verse, Evgeny Onegin, was the first Russian work to explore the contemporary society as its subject matter and paved the way for Russian realistic novel. The contemporary society was actually explored by previous writers also, but Pushkin actually encompassed the whole, he gave a very wide picture of Russia. And that is why Belinsky actually defined it as the encyclopedia of Russian society. Other than that, Pushkin was the first one to present few typical characters prevalent in the Russian society of that time. The first one was the superfluous man. What is superfluous man? I would say the superfluous man is mostly traced in the turbulent period of transition. He's usually from the privileged class. He is talented, liberal-minded, and he actually is not willing to accept the regressive norms, but that at the same time, he is not able to stand up against it. As a result, he cannot take the initiative to stand up against it. As a result, he is unable to find a grounding in the society. He becomes passive, many a times egoistical. And his means of escape, very often we see, is in gambling, in drinking, and in romantic intrigues. His life usually ends in a tragic note. So this is the superfluous man, which Pushkin was the first to depict. And thereafter, many Russian writers have explored this superfluous man in their works. They are Mikhail Lermontov, Hero of a Time. It is Ivan Turgenev, The Diary of a Superfluous Man, and Rudin. In fact, the term superfluous man became popular after Ivan Turgenev published his work, The Diary of a Superfluous Man. It was Rudin, it was Alexander Herzen who is to be blamed, Ivan Goncharev, Oblomov. These are the most popular ones. There are many more. Other than the superfluous man, the other typical character which Pushkin depicted for the first time is the character of a little man. Little man, the character of a little man, the emergence of this character is somewhere associated with the, I would say the Russian career ladder system, which was there. It is associated to that, and it is actually it denotes the official from the lower ranking who actually suffered due to lack of means, lack of confidence, lack of self-esteem, lack of right, and mostly burdened with various liabilities. So this character of little man was again taken and explored by many of his successors. So first it was, of course, Gogol in the novel Overcoat and Notes of a Madman. It was Mikhail Dostoevsky in Poor People and Crime and Punishment. It was Anton Chekhov, Death of an Official, and The Fat and the Thin. These are the most popular ones again. There are many more. And in 20th century also, the theme of the little man is well explored by writers like Mikhail Zoshenka and Vasily Shukshin. Now, I would like to talk about why we are talking about Pushkin in India, and did Pushkin's work leave an impact on Indian writers? So first I will talk about the writer who actually was influenced by Pushkin. So I personally got only one such evidence. It is Vikram Seth's first novel, The Golden Gate. It is actually written it is also a novel in verse. He was influenced by Pushkin's Evgeny Onegin, and impressed by his work, he wrote this Golden Gate, where he used the Onegin stanza. That means the metric system was the same as Pushkin had used. And he himself has said that I would never have become a writer if not Evgeny Onegin in a beautiful translation of Charles Johnston. Now, I would talk about the indirect influence. Pushkin, as I said, I did not find such evidences of his direct influence, but indirectly, I feel he had influenced the Indian writers, like the theme of a little man. As I said, after Pushkin, many used Gogol, Dostoevsky, Chekhov, and Chekhov had really left an impact on many Indian writers. Premchand is one of them. So we came across one of Premchand's story, Guli Danda. And that Guli Danda, if you read Chekhov's The Thin and the Fat, the fat and the thin, you will find a striking resemblance. And the aim of the author was also the same, to show the psychology of inferiority complex which they go through, the bureaucracy which exists, and that servility. The theme of servility is there. So here I would say it is quite possible Premchand had under the influence of Chekhov has written it, because Premchand was influenced by Chekhov, and Chekhov had taken from Pushkin. So here I would say this is the indirect influence of Pushkin. Talking about the other theme, superfluous man. Yes, superfluous man is there in Indian literature too. One of the very popular character is Devdas of Sharachandra. He has all the characteristic features of superfluous man. He is a superfluous man. Here, of course, I'm not sure whether Sharachandra was introduced to Pushkin's work or works of, maybe he knew, he had read Turgenev's works, but regarding Pushkin, I'm not sure. But here, it is significant because there are typological affinities. Even if there is if there's no influence, then we can definitely trace typological affinities in the societies, because of that similar kind of characters come out. So here, that's why it is very interesting to draw comparative analysis between these two characters, the superfluous characters of superfluous man. This is what I would like to say. And the third part of my talk is on the concept of Pushkiniana. What is Pushkiniana? Pushkin died when he was in the peak of his career. And the death of Pushkin could not obliterate his name. On the contrary, the writers wanted to know more of him. As a result, Pushkin's character and Pushkin's literary characters became a subject matter of the works of the writers from the successive period. So one of the critics said that rare are the creators of words who at least once did not mention Pushkin in their works. And this progression gives birth to the concept of Pushkiniana. That is the prevalence of Pushkin and Pushkinian themes in the works of Russian writers through the ages. The first work which came up is Mikhail Lermontov's On the Death of a Poet, which was, of course, spent right after Pushkin's death. And he writes as a contemporary. The other writer in whose works we see the image of Pushkin is A.N. Apukhin, the 19th October of the year of 1858. The motive of the writer here was that to remind of the great loss of the Russians because of Pushkin's death. Amongst the non-fictional works on Pushkin, I would like to talk about Mikhail Dostoevsky's historic speech on Pushkin's birth anniversary on the occasion of unveiling his statue. Where he says that Pushkin is an extraordinary phenomena and perhaps the unique phenomena of the Russian spirit. That was said by Gogol. And Dostoevsky, fully supporting that, adds that he was also a prophetic phenomena. Pushkin came to us as a new guiding light, a brilliant illumination of a dark way. So from his speech, you can well imagine how he actually valued Pushkin and Pushkin's work, appreciated Pushkin. The treatment of Pushkin and his works by the writers, modernist writers, from the end of 19th century and beginning of 20th century, ran to extremes. If one section of the modernist writers, I'm talking about the futurists, they officially proclaimed that Pushkin should be offloaded from the ship of contemporaneity, the other section of modernist writers continued to treasure his works. Amongst them, Akhmatova was the ardent, I would say, follower of Pushkin. She considered Pushkin as the symbol of Russia, and she had done a lot of research on Pushkin's work. She wrote essays on Pushkin. She had, we can see image of Pushkin in her works. And she, in her early works, we could also see an imprint of Pushkin. So somewhere she, in her early work, she imitated Pushkin. So she worshipped Pushkin. There was another poetess from the beginning of 20th century, Marina Tsvetaeva. She was also a very ardent, I would say, fan of Pushkin, I would say. She also had done a lot of research and wrote fictional and non-fictional works on Pushkin, but her treatment was absolutely different. If Akhmatova kept Pushkin on a pedestal, Marina Tsvetaeva, she actually addressed to Pushkin as a like-minded person, as a friend. Thereafter, Pushkin's image we also come across during the Soviet period. So that Pushkiniana was still there during the Soviet period. Especially, I would like to talk about Bulgakov's Master y Margherita, where the image of Pushkin comes in different forms. In the end of 20th century, during the postmodernist era, the treatment of Pushkin was absolutely different, I would say. It could be called as the domestication of Pushkin's image. What I mean to say is that it was no more romanticized. It was no more worshipped. It had a characteristic of a common man. And many a times it was portrayed with a sense of humor, with a tone of humor. So we see that Pushkin, his work, and he as a person has always been a subject matter of Russian literature, though the treatment was, it varied from age to age, different trend to trend, but still he was there. Nobody could ignore. So in conclusion, I would like to say that Pushkin is indeed the cultural symbol of Russia. He was a Russian phenomenon. The illustrious legacy of his has been alive in the form of borrowing, adaptation, reinterpretation, intertextuality, and even parody by the writers from the successive generations. which proves that his significance in promotion of Russian culture is impossible to ignore. He epitomizes the cultural heritage of Russia. Thank you. If you have any questions, you may ask, because I was, asked to finish within 30 minutes. I don't know whether I have taken more time. I don't know whether I have gone beyond that time. But if you have any questions, you may ask.
Thank you, ma'am, for this wonderful presentation. We started with Pushkin's life, and slowly we actually did a lovely trajectory from Pushkin's own period up to the postmoderns, as you have said. I don't know if anybody has any question to ask, or in that case, I shall otherwise proceed to the next part of it.
Ranjana, would you please stop sharing your screen, please?
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. I will just do it. Just a second.
And so I just wanted to make sure that if our Vice Chancellor is already in, ma'am, Professor Mathur, any idea?
Yes, sir. Are you joining us?
Ma'am, shall I continue?
Yes, Tato.
Yeah.
I just spoke to him.
Yeah.
And he was with us for a while, but he has left to go to another meeting now.
Okay, so
I think we can proceed.
Okay, so in fact, as I was also expecting our Vice Chancellor to give a speech, and in your intervention, Professor Banerjee, you talked about the lycée where Pushkin studied. In fact, that is a very important point, even from an institutional point of view for IGNOU, because Lycée Français is globally known for its quality of education, and mostly the diplomats, aristocrats, and nobles, they go there. In the present day India, democratizing the education has been a main theme. And actually, I was trying to hint at the institutional effort that we have undertaken at the Indira Gandhi National Open University with national education policy. In fact, that quality education, which used to be perhaps only available at certain institutions, that IGNOU is a part of, because, I would just take this opportunity to talk about this national education policy, and IGNOU is a nodal point in that revolutionary endeavor under the leadership of our Vice Chancellor, Professor Nageshwar Rao. And in his absence, then may I ask our Pro-Vice Chancellor to say something, or shall we proceed to the vote of thanks, sir?
I think we could proceed to the vote of thanks.
Okay, then may I now call upon Dr. Janani V, who is my colleague and consultant of School of Foreign Languages and interpreter and a literary translator, to offer the vote of thanks on behalf of School of Foreign Languages. Dr. Janani.
Thank you, Tato-san, as we fondly call him in our group. Tato-san, thank you. And it is a very sad part of any event that we have to render a vote of thanks. And this means it's the end of the event. However, any event comes to an end. And I would like to extend my gratitude at this point of the event because it's a must from our side. And without the encouragement and support of the August gathering of this webinar, this event wouldn't have been possible. First of all, we extend our gratitude to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Shri Nageshwar Raoji, IGNOU, for encouraging us and extending his support to us for organizing such an event. His words of encouragement and support has always made us take us another SOFL event with confidence within a week was planned. Огромное спасибо вам, Михаил Михайлович. Мы очень благодарны вам за то, что вы приняли наше приглашение. Thank you, our esteemed guest, Consular Embassy of the Russian Federation, New Delhi, for accepting our invitation. Your presence and your words will definitely incite not only us as teachers of Russian language, but our students as well. And I'm sure would also get to the ears of our prospective students all over India to learn Russian, and also as it has much prospects and job opportunities as well. Leave alone job opportunities, the rich culture which Russian represents with its literature, its tradition, its culture is immense, which all of us should learn to take our life as such ahead. Our special thanks to our Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Srimati Sumitra Kukureti, ma'am, for the special address. Thank you, ma'am. Your encouragement and support, as always, boosted us to go ahead with our idea of holding a webinar today on the Russian Language Day, the 223rd birth anniversary of Pushkin. Also, we would like to thank our other Pro Vice Chancellors, all directors of our School of Studies, directors RSD, ENPC, and Director of Center for Online Education. Огромное спасибо вам, Professor Srimati Ranjana Banerjee. Special thanks for accepting our invitation for delivering today's talk for our webinar theme, Remembering Alexander Pushkin. Your talk on Russian literature and the legacy of Alexander Pushkin has thrown light on the author and his accomplishments in his short lifespan, and also given us more food for thought about a foreign language and its people and literature. You have taken us on a travel trip from the 19th century to the present 21st century, and how even today it is so relevant in our society Pushkin is, and his work and his thoughts. And to go ahead, we have remembered him till the 21st century, celebrating his 223rd anniversary on this day, the June 6th, 2022. Knowledge as such is important. Knowledge of language, literature, culture of a foreign land definitely enriches our own culture. We see that in the case of Pushkin, who started learning through French and developed Russian as the standard literary language used today, which is the example, which is a proof, I can say, that we have to learn our own mother tongue as well as a foreign language to boost our confidence from within, and also to know about cultures around and take the culture of the foreign land to our motherland and enrich our motherland and progress ahead. As now, the Russian language is also in space, as we keep listening to so many endeavors by Russia. Going to the first acquaintance of my Russian also was with the space, with Rakesh Sharma going to the space. And also the poem of Pushkin, Ya Vas Lyubil, was also the first poem which I had learned in translation before knowing Russian. Professor Srimati Malati Mathur, Professor of English Literature and Director of School of Humanities and School of Foreign Languages. Our director needs a special round of applause for getting the team together and organizing this event. Not only her encouragement, but her tiring efforts, her support on many of her questions were answered very patiently and made this event happen so quickly. Thank you, ma'am. Without mentioning the last person, but not the least, it's our program coordinator and faculty, Mr. Shivaji Bhaskarji of School of Foreign Languages, who needs a special mention of thanks to. Thank you, Shivaji Bhaskarji, for your availability throughout and anytime and making this event happen. Without technical support, and especially the webinar that needs the online support, we would have gone nowhere. So our special thanks to them too. Colleagues,
thank you, ma'am.
We
are missing your sweet smile and face also.
I'll show it once this is done. Colleagues from regional centers, colleagues from SOFL, friends and prospective learners of Russian, thank you for your support and participation. And of course, the pleasant voice of our moderator took us through the event. And thank you so much, Tato-san, for your wonderful moderation throughout the event. And this comes to a conclusion of the event. And thank you so much. Hope we organize more webinars and we get insights of more knowledge ahead. I too wait eagerly for such webinars. Thank you.
So thank you all very much. All the colleagues who joined us, all the colleagues who participated, our guests who made this webinar a success. Thank you all.
Thank you.
What is your dream investment?